Welcome, you're listening to Abnormal Japan, a podcast based in Tokyo. We share our experience living in Japan while diving into abnormal topics. If you're an expat, curious about traveling, or just a lover of all things Japan, check us out. You can find our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. All the links will be in the description. All right, let's get on with it. Hey everyone, I'm your host Bree. Welcome to season 2. Last episode we discussed homesickness while living abroad with tips, so check it out.
All right.
As always, I'm here with my co-host.
Hey, I'm Ashish. I am, I don't want to give any spoilers right away in the beginning of the episode, but today's all about me.
Yeah, today we're going to interview Ashish. Today's topic is going to be the experience of a JET program, ALT, in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So for some context, JET is a Japanese exchange and teaching program. And Ashish came to Japan via this program, and we're going to talk about it.
Yep.
Also, an ALT, for those that don't know, is an assistant language teacher. And this program is a long process. Some people who are interested in teaching in Japan have probably heard of this program. It's pretty popular.
Yeah.
And it usually takes like a whole year for the application process, including being accepted into the program. So there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about, but we're just going to go with some starters. And if you have any questions, just leave some comments below.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. So I'm low-key nervous, but, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, let's see. All right, so I want to know what made you apply for the JET program.
So initially, I didn't really have a goal of teaching in Japan, right? It just kind of, it flew across my radar. So one of the things that got me interested was when we were in college, a lot of, I don't know what they're called, but they're like different programs. They're like study abroad, and then right next to them, there's like, oh, do you want to teach TEFL, like teaching English as a foreign language? And as an English major, I thought that was actually really interesting because I was studying English. What was I doing? I did creative writing and fiction, so teaching wasn't like a real focus of mine. But the idea of traveling for work was always really interesting to me. So my mom traveled a lot for work all the time. And I already knew that it was very possible to do. So that's kind of what interested me in doing it.
Okay.
What made me apply was actually looking into different programs and seeing that, from what I understand, JET is like the most official one. So they work directly with local metropolitan governments, so you're essentially like a government employee. So that level of security was appealing to me as a college student, and then also the traveling abroad kind of deal that came along with it. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, because what I've heard with JET, they fly you out.
Yeah, so I got flew out there. And it was kind of an experience because there's a lot more story in there, but yes, this is true.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different programs and language schools and different ways you can teach in Japan. And there are a lot of stories about JETs. I just think Ashish's experience is a little unique.
It's different for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. When you applied, how many times did you apply and until you made it?
So the application application process. I teach English, y'all. I'm good. The application,
You sure?
Yeah, I'm good. The application process is actually really lengthy. So the first time I applied was actually before I graduated.
Before you graduated, what?
From university, sorry. You have to have a bachelor's degree at the bare minimum, and it doesn't have to be in English. Like, you can have a bachelor's degree in whatever. They just require that as a base level education requirement.
Okay.
And I think most teaching programs do as well. But for JET, they said you have to have a bachelor's degree, or you can apply before you graduate. And then as long as you actually earn your bachelor's degree, you can, mail us the documentation and all that. So I applied once before I was about to graduate, didn't make it. And then I applied again the next year. And that's also when I made it, but there's like a kind of a caveat right there. So I applied twice and I made it after the second time.
Didn't on your first time you technically, I think you made it. It was just like what was it, alternate?
Yeah, so alternate is like a shortlist. So I got shortlisted.
Yeah, I mean that's still something because like some people get the cut like from the get go.
Right.
Because it is pretty. I don't know if I would say prestigious, but
it's definitely very like choosy. They're very selective.
yeah, that's true. That's what I was trying to say. So I know so many people from all over the world apply because it's not just for the States. You can apply from any country from what I know.
For sure.
I know they expect people from English speaking countries.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to see what countries, they allow to apply.
Mm-hmm.
So on your second time, that process kind of happened again as well, like becoming an alternate?
Yeah, it was the same process. So what happened the first time was they have like different tiers, right? So there's like like in sports teams, I don't know if every country is the same, but like back in Texas, it was like A string, B string, and like C string, right? So you have different like levels of players who go right away onto the field, or then you have the backup and then the backup and like special teams or whatever. So I actually got to like C string, which means I wasn't accepted as going in there's like two groups that go, but I was accepted as a backup. So if somebody couldn't make it, if somebody decided not to contract, or if somebody like canceled their contract like midway or something, or a previous person canceled like after recontracting or whatever the case, it was a backup position. So what happens is they don't let you know that you are what's it called, a backup position, until the time comes to where you know for sure if you're going or not. So the first time when I applied, I got the mail that like, okay, you've been accepted as an alternate, right?
Okay.
So an alt. But yeah, that time I didn't get upgraded to regular time alt. The second time I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. I think the different teams kind of make sense. Regardless of A, B, or C, the people are generally the same level. I think it's just more about spots.
Yeah.
Like how many spots.
It's not a skill thing. It's,
Yeah, that's why I was like noticing, because I know people who came here earlier are still in the same level.
Right.
For people who came later, some people in C group actually have higher qualifications. So I think it's the amount of spots that they can fill. They want more English teachers. So I think
so they adjusted their criteria for Tokyo specifically. And that's what opened up a lot of positions, I think, even in the last 5 years. Because Tokyo is one of the few places that JET kind of wasn't very prevalent prior to like maybe 2016, because they're trying to gear up for the Olympics.
Pretty new, because like other prefectures, I know JET's been there for like years and years.
Decades almost, yeah.
Yeah, I think since the 80s, right?
Yeah, give or take. They have a very long history in like rural areas, like the Inaka side of like northeast Japan and like southwest Japan. Like they have a lot of range. Yeah,
and then in Tokyo, I think there was only a few for the longest time, and then they just like upsurged and just made all these spots
right
for teachers.
They said something like it was a 300% growth. So they went from like 20 to 40 teachers of all of Tokyo to like 300, something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of us now.
Yeah, that's cool. So what do you think helped for the second time?
I don't know.
Oh?
Yeah, and that's an honest answer, because the first time I applied, I was like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, I am going to be great. And then the second time, I was a little jaded. But I remember in the application process, you have to write a letter of, not recommendation, you have to like write up a statement letter. And in the statement letter, I remember putting, that I didn't make it the last time. And it was a really tough choice to decide whether or not to apply again, considering how long the process was. And so I was honest about that. And I also said that in the year that I had been waiting, it was up to me to kind of figure out if I still wanted to apply if I didn't make it a second time.
Okay.
Yeah, so like for me, when I was writing the letter, it was very important to be honest about the fact that I know it's a low possibility, but I do think I would probably try again.
Okay, so they probably saw like dedication.
Yeah, and then also what I did was that I didn't like what am I trying to say? I didn't limit myself just to jet, but I also showed that like I was still wanted to do this if the chance arose. So I think that is what kind of pushed me over the edge to being upgraded versus all the other people who might have been shortlisted as well.
Yeah, I think so, because after coming with you to Japan as like your spouse, and we can also talk about that if you have any questions about that. But I noticed with people who come here on the JET program, they kind of get nervous and like cold feet once they get here. And so people are known to like leave in the middle of their first year contract, or just leave right, like they just like, oh, I can't handle it. So I think your dedication probably proved to them, okay, this person actually wants to be in Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know?
I definitely showed that. Like, again, I was very honest about it. I was like, if I don't make it, it's a battle for me to decide whether or not I want to apply again, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
And it makes sense, because a year long process,
it's
like
you
don't know what you're gonna do like in a year. Like you can have ideas, but it's like waiting to get this job, and then sometimes you have to kind of formulate your life just in case it happens.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads to my next question. How long did you have to pack and process the papers and visas and fly over to Japan, like when you found out?
All right, so what happened was I applied the second time. I believe the applications open up in the fall winter time. So I did all my paperwork, turned it into I believe the Houston office. And so once that had processed, it was a waiting time to say, did you get an interview? And I knew it was a good chance that I would get an interview because I got an interview the first time. So my name was already in their records, and they would be like, oh, well, this person already was here. Let's just bring them back to see if we can use them, basically. And then I went and did the interview. And then after that, it's a waiting game, right? So if you're going, they'll let you know. If you're shortlisted, you kind of have to figure that out. Like you have to contact somebody and they'll be like, oh, okay, well, you're shortlisted. Sometimes they'll send you an email. I have heard stories where they don't. The first year I did, the second year I didn't. So I was like, okay, what's going on? They told me I was in the same situation. I was a little dejected, but that was in March or April. So that's when the early departures leave for the first semester of the Japanese school year. Most jets come in June to August.
Okay.
So there's about 4 groups. So there's the early departures, then there's group A, B, which is in June and July, and then there's group C, which is the upgrades. So what happened was in, I believe, July, or it was like late June or early July.
I think it was like mid-July, yeah.
Yeah. I got a phone call one day randomly in the morning. It was an off day. And I was working like part-time at a place. And it was my off day. I got a call, and I recognized the number because it was from the jet offices. Like I had it saved. And so I was like, oh, that's weird. So I like cleared out my groggy voice. And I was like, hey, what's up? Good morning, something. And they're like, hey, so a position opened up. Are you still interested in going? And so I was like, okay, can you give me a second? And I talked to you about it.
Yeah.
And it was weird.
I vaguely remember that morning. Because I remember you had a call, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Like the call woke me up.
I wasn't sure who it was, but when like you had like a more professional tone, I was like, oh, who could that be? Because like I didn't know what was going on.
It was like 8 or something in the morning. We were both off.
Yeah, and I remember you said Jet called and they want me to go to Japan, and we were just like shocked. We were like, what? Because when you did hear about being an alternate, we were like, okay, well, because you have, from what I remember, they can call you anytime from that point that they tell you you're an alternate.
Yes.
All the way till December that year.
Which is, so if you apply, let's say I applied in 2017, like the first time, right? I found out I was an alternate in like, or
well,
late
you
March,
applied
early
in 2016.
April. Right, I'm sorry.
And then you heard about the alternate, I think, spring of 2017?
Yes, so 2016 fall, I applied in like October, something like that. And so 2017 March, which is, I believe, when we graduated, like in the spring semester?
No, we graduated in 2016 in May.
In May. That's what it was. Okay.
It's yeah, the years are getting kind of foggy.
Right. And so what happened is, as I was an alternate, they let me know I was an alternate the first time. They were like, okay, we can call you in any time from now till December.
Yeah. And that's such a long time to just be expecting, like, oh, am I going to go? Because if they don't call you, like, you just don't. So you could be anticipating for
and March
almost
is
a whole
like
year.
What, the third month? So that's like 9 months of waiting.
Yeah.
That's
so
damn near a pregnancy.
A whole child
could have happened.
I know. And I remember once it hit June, that's why I think it was in July when they called, because I remember in June we were like, maybe we should pick a different plan.
Right. We had a plan B to like move and figure something out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because something about like our apartment lease and like we wanted to move towns.
That's what we did. We took a summer trip, and right after the summer trip they called. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Oh my. Okay. Yeah. It's all coming together.
And when they called, it was when we were like finalizing our new plan, which was so ironic. So it made the pressure even more intense. And for me, at least, because I was like, well, we didn't have much going on for a little while, but then we made this new plan. And then now we have this other option that is just...
Right, and the new plan looks like it might work. And then this happens.
Yeah. And honestly, y'all, we just couldn't skip the opportunity.
Yeah, I remember we talked about it for like 30 seconds or so while the phone was on mute. And I was like, I got back on the phone. I was like, yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, just send me an email of what I need to do. And so they did, and now we're here. Yeah,
but how long did you have to like pack and move?
Okay, yeah, so that was the question. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Until you arrived.
Bring it back. Okay, so the call was in like mid-July. Yeah, it was mid-July because we took a summer trip. Okay. So
and then you arrived to Tokyo when?
So remember those groups I was talking about. There's early departures in April. There's a group A. There's a group B. And then I told you there's a group C for the upgrades. Yeah, the group C leaves in like August. So I had like a month, give or take. It was like maybe 3.5 weeks to cancel the lease.
Yeah.
To get rid of everything, which we had already previously co-married.
Yeah.
If y'all don't know what that is, it's like a cleaning method. Y'all should know what that is. So we co-married, canceled the lease, packed, figured out what to bring, got government documents.
Yeah, like finalized the visas,
turned them into the embassy, all that.
And they were quick with it because I was like, well, we have everything, like the health certificates, like we have like the passports.
We did it the previous year.
Yeah, well, no, because we had to set it up anyways,
Right, I'm saying we had everything like ready to go. We were like, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were like, okay, so we're gonna do the whole visa thing, and we had to like send in our passports. But it was so fast. Like normally when you're waiting for a visa, it could take like weeks or months, but they were like, you're going soon, boom boom bat, like there you go. I was like,
it was
wow.
very quick. I was actually surprised at the quickness they did it with, like the US to Japan side. Like it's pretty far, but they got it done as soon as they could. Like that, I was very impressed with that.
True. So you had like about a month. That is so intense. Because I was part of the process, but like, I think we were both in shock.
It was kind of like all right, we don't have time to think about it right now. We just have to like, it was, what is the next step kind of thing. So that 3 weeks was really intense. Like I was saying, we had a lot to do, but also like what was harder for me is holding it together. You know what I mean? Like, because there were so many moving parts. It was like each thing had to be very meticulous, and I'm good at it, but you're better at me at like holding little details together and keeping things organized. So like I'm willing to admit that, like straight up.
We're a great team, I would say.
But I think that like holding everything together, making sure all the parts were moving, all the gears were grinding like properly, that was, I think, the hardest thing, is to make sure that what is the next step. And then making sure, okay, once that step is done, what do we need for the next step? Like that preemptive kind of thing. Like I'm good at doing the stuff and then like planning it all, but like that preemptive thing, you're really good at that. So I appreciated how we worked together on that part. That, I think, to me was the most difficult thing about those 3 weeks. So it was like mid-July, week 1, week 2, week 3. and then I go, and then a week later you were coming.
Yeah,
That's
we decided
essentially
to
the time
travel
frame.
separately because I just felt like, like you go focus on like the jet orientation, and I'll just finalize anything here in the States because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to make sure you have prepared. And we kind of talked about that in our first episode, Houston versus Tokyo. There's a lot of things to prepare before you leave a whole country. And it can be even more intense when you have children. Luckily, we don't,
Yeah.
or if you're by yourself or if you don't have family in the same state that you're leaving from. It could be a lot of things. But I
Yeah.
think it worked out smoothly and,
Yeah, it was intense, but like going back to like the gears and like grinding analogy, like everything was oiled, everything was going real smooth.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was kind of scary because everything was happening so quickly, but it was happening like well. Like there weren't too many
I was
roadblocks.
surprised that like how much we adjusted.
Yeah.
And that's why we like talking about this, because a lot of people's stories that we hear, like they've been prepping to move to Japan for like years, or they found out about moving like at least half a year before moving. So when we just had like less than a month to get it together.
Yeah, or they had like the right circumstances to like,
True.
They had the knowledge or they had a connection. Like our situation is very different from what I've heard.
But I will say it's still very doable. And I don't know, we did it. So I feel like I feel like other people can do it. You just gotta want to do it and then make sure you're staying on top of things.
Yeah.
So
and if the chance comes, you gotta jump at it. Like
true.
Because we could have said no. We could have said, hey, let's think about it, and then the spot could have closed. Like
yeah, because they're very notorious for like filling up all the spots as quickly as possible. And also what region and prefecture, like when you found that out?
Yeah, okay, so they said they had an opening in Tokyo. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But like when I got here, I realized how weird that was when I applied. And when I applied the first time and second time, I didn't put any preferences. The first time I was like, oh, it'd be cool to have Tokyo or Kyoto or Osaka or Nagoya, like whatever. I just did a bunch of things. Second time I said no preference. I was like, whatever. Like I really don't care. And then they put me in Tokyo, which I didn't think was weird until I got here. Which we'll go into that. I'm sure we'll go into that later. But yeah.
I thought it was very like, I don't know. I think you were very lucky. For some people don't like Tokyo. So for them, they probably wouldn't like it. But I think because anytime I've heard about JET and people applying, this is like one of the quotes I always hear. Don't expect to get placed in Tokyo. Don't expect to get placed in Tokyo. Yeah, I did see that
quite a bit. They're like, oh, you're going to get something you may not like.
Yeah, and I think why people have been saying that is because the spots were so minimal. And it's still minimal compared to other places. But when they told you, I was like, whoa. Like, so not only did you make it, but you got Tokyo. Yeah, like, what is going on?
Like, you had that background more. I remember when I heard about it, I was like, okay, cool, Tokyo, like whatever. I was kind of in shock, but I remember when you told me that, and I remember like all the like JET videos or whatever we'd seen. That's when it kicked in, like, oh, right, Tokyo isn't that common of a placement. And I figured something must have happened to where like somebody had to leave, and it turns out that was the case. But I was like, okay, so I guess like everybody was already filled up. And then magically this spot opened.
Dude, life works in weird ways. Like
yeah, for sure.
And I will say, like, after being here, especially because I came here with no plan, I just came here to travel and just start life on a new foot. Because I was in a transition period of figuring out what I wanted to do post-graduation. I wasn't sure if I wanted to jump straight into grad school or keep on working where it was, or just do something completely different. And I was leaning towards the third one, but it is hard just doing what you want when you gotta survive.
Yeah, that's true. That is real.
So when we moved here, we figured, okay, this is a perfect opportunity for you to try something new with your career. And then it's a moment for me to just see the world, because I don't know if y'all have listened to the other episodes, but I've never left Texas. So moving to Japan was huge. And
wasn't it your first international flight too?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I was a little low-key scared, But it's not that bad. After that, we ended up traveling internationally like a couple of times, so it's all good. But I do think we came here for a reason, and I just don't know exactly what that reason is just yet. But I feel like it's coming closer. And I'm not really into that like woo-woo stuff as much.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to be like super vague and like, ooh, like, I don't, you know what I'm trying to say?
Y'all understand woo-woo stuff. Like, I'm sure you know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be like that, but I do feel like something like that is happening. It's weird.
Yeah, and that's another thing when I think about like what the reason was for my predecessor leaving. So my predecessor was, I think they were going to stay on for another year. So Jet recently upped the year intake. So it used to be you could only stay for 3 years, and then they bumped that to 5, which is, I believe, give or take, the maximum for a lot of other contracts. Like some you can stay forever, some you only have a couple years, but Jet moved up to 5. So my predecessor was going to stay for another year, but then she got accepted to grad school. So she went back to like Boston or something, wherever, I don't know. So an opportunity opened up for her in her life to go somewhere else, and then her moving and her making that choice opened up this opportunity for us. Yeah. So that, like you were saying, like life works in weird ways. Like, you know, you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. All right. So when you heard about your placement, what school level did they tell you were going to teach? Like, so what do you teach?
So I found out when I got here, I was placed in a high school. Yeah. So when I was contracted, they told me the school very close to the leaving date. So they told me like, okay, this is the school you're going. It's a secondary school. And I didn't like understand what that meant. But apparently secondary school is, I believe, the general term for junior high and high school. So there's like elementary, which is like elementary. And then there's secondary, which is like junior high school levels. So I knew I was going to be in that age range.
Okay. So was that your preference, like, or did you want to teach like elementary or?
Well, I didn't have a preference actually. So when I took my teaching course in university, what we did was we had age brackets that were specific for different courses. So I took a general course, which meant I had to like we covered. What was I trying to say? We covered learning and different course making methods for different age groups and for different like techniques and stuff like that. So when I applied, I said, you know, I don't have a preference. Like I just want to work with y'all. Just put me wherever I'll fit. And so they put me in a high school. And Japanese high schools are different. So if y'all are anywhere outside of Japan, Japan has 3 years of high school. And where we come from in the States, there's 4. So like that was interesting. Weird.
Yeah, they also call like those 3 years first graders, second and third graders.
Yeah.
And so I was confused when you're like, yeah, I'm going to be teaching first graders. And I was like, wait, I thought you were working at a high school.
Yeah, it's like high school first grade or something like that.
It makes sense now. Yeah. Okay, so do you think that was a good fit for you?
The way I see it, I have come to fit it better.
Okay.
Because I'm generally kind of like energetic when it comes to my work. I try not to let, you know, what I'm dealing with affect the work that I do. I try, you know, I'm not the best at it, but when it comes to work, high schoolers are typically kind of, they don't really care about a lot of things. Like they have a lot going on already. And English is already one of those things that they feel like is, I don't know how to put it. It's like, it's kind of being pushed on them, especially because they live in Tokyo.
I could see that.
So I didn't know how I was going to fit it first. I think I've come to fit it more. And also I've come to address the needs of my students better over time. I feel like if I was put into elementary school, I would have been great from the jump. Like that would have been fine. I have a decent energy level that I can maintain. Junior high kids are kind of in between high school. So I don't know how I would have fit there. I think that would have been harder learning because they're kind of elementary kids, but they're also kind of going to high school. So they're like in that weird, they're like preteen age.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would fit well in that one. Okay. So I feel like I would fit well in elementary or high school. And I'm glad I got put in high school because the kids are more, developed, I guess. Like it's a little bit easier to get the concepts across.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, I know some people really like teaching at elementaries,
Mm-hmm.
and then some are like, no, like give me high school or even university.
Right.
So that's cool that it worked out for you because, I mean, it's your school. You're stuck with it.
Right.
So,
If I had a choice, I would choose high school or elementary, either or. Junior high, I think, would probably be the worst fit for me.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I know there's different locations for jets.
Right.
I know there's like suburbs, city, countryside. What kind of jet are you, and what kind of differences have you noticed?
So, I don't really hang out with other jets too often. Like, I have a couple friends who came at the same time as me that we still kind of maintain contact. But for the most part, the jets are like they're kind of dispersed in different areas, right? So my school is more suburby. A lot of students will have to commute out like to the suburb area, like outside of the city limits, like what you wouldn't consider Tokyo. Like if you don't know anything about Tokyo, you wouldn't consider this part Tokyo. It'd be like kind of like Houston is like really, really big, and you have like the outskirts.
True.
It's kind of like the outside the Beltway region,
but it's
of
like
things.
still Houston.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
that's where-
Tokyo is huge, y'all. Like I think I mentioned that before, but it's really
real
big. Yeah.
It's bigger than I was expecting, honestly.
It's not big like in mass because like other locations have bigger, they're bigger. But for the idea of Tokyo, I thought it was just a certain part, but it's very expansive.
Yeah, for sure. And so we're kind of out in the it's kind of suburby, it's kind of urban because there are urban areas around, but
It's like the
just
middle.
outside that. Yeah.
Like the transition of urban, suburb, and then country.
Yeah, kind of mountain country.
It's like the transition. I think it's a really good blend.
Oh yeah.
From where we kind of grew up.
I was not expecting it, and I love it. But yeah, that's where I'm at, and I really love my school. Like I'm almost here for 2 years now, and it's great. Like I've really come to appreciate everything that goes on in my school and everything that they have me involved in, and I don't know if I can say the same for other areas because I know the main difference I've noticed from talking to other jet teachers when we get together for like professional developments, or like if I talk to them like on Facebook or wherever, is the more urban schools they tend to be stricter in their curriculum unless you are working with them to develop that. So if you're a jet teacher, you are essentially a civil servant, right? Because you're an exchange teacher, you're directly working for this school under the employment of the metropolitan government, right? So you're more or less on the same level as the teachers. You may not have the same responsibilities. That's like the main difference.
Okay.
So that's with urban schools. Like you have to either be a part of the curriculum making, or you kind of just have to do what they tell you. Right.
Okay, yeah, I have heard a lot of that. Like some jets have said they're kind of like a tape recorder.
That's a very common complaint.
So how is it living in the suburbs and teaching for that kind of like school?
I can't attest to all the schools, but the schools in my area and the schools that are around, the suburby kind of like mountainy, not urban range, we tend to have less focus on curriculum and more focus on acquisition. So like it doesn't, well, at least for the jet side, right? For the regular, like all year round, like like contract teachers or whatever, like the regular Japanese teachers of English, they have a curriculum that they have to address. They have certain needs to meet. And then our job is to assist them with that. So in more urban schools, usually the jet teachers are kind of seen as an additional learning tool. And then in the suburb areas, we're kind of seen as like not like a substitute teacher, but kind of like an extra teacher. Like this is like an extra course to help the students learn their core materials.
So would you say you're able to experiment more, like beyond the curriculum?
I've had to. I don't know if other teachers have. My school has actually, when I first got here, they had one textbook for my class, and it was a very short textbook, and each lesson was 2 pages. And it was all, okay, these are the sounds that you have to do for this lesson, and that's all we have to give you. So you're going to have to figure something out.
Wow. So you had to make up your own lessons and stuff.
Yeah, it was the opposite of a tape recorder. So like I had to be a tape recorder for them to like get the sounds, and then I also had to get them to practice the sounds and give them activities to do the sounds, and I had to make all the materials. And yeah,
I mean, I think that's cool. I know it's a lot of work, but I do think your job pays you well for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would also say that is building your experience and your skill. So when you move on,
1,000.
You weren't just a tape recorder. You actually learn how to make lessons and how to engage students, and you grew with them. So I think that's a really awesome skill.
Yes, and when I first got here, I didn't really have that much to go off of. So I kind of used my predecessor's leftover material that she had left behind, which was super helpful, but it was also it wasn't outdated, but it wasn't like perfectly fit.
Okay.
So I had some things, but I had to like redo it, and I had to figure out how to go.
Yeah, like, probably for your teaching style.
Yeah, and even to like use the equipment, because I've heard stories where the classrooms are not as well equipped. I know even on the Izu Islands, there are jets out there. And so sometimes the schools have different amenities based on their budgets, based on their locations, based on like the SES of the area. Luckily, my school has pretty good facilities. So I'm not too like, I'm not held back by the facilities. It's more so like I didn't have the raw material to use.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've noticed in the urban schools too. The suburban schools, I'm sorry, is that you kind of have to do more work than I guess other teachers are expected to, but also that doesn't always translate. I know my school tells me like, hey, this is your lesson time, so you can do whatever you want and tell us how we can help you, but that is a very rare occurrence. Even in the schools around us, they have more freedom, but I haven't heard of anybody have as much freedom as I have, which
okay.
I don't know how I feel about that, but I mean, like, it is.
I think it works for you. I think for your personality type, it really works. I think if you weren't able to be creative, I think you may feel like stagnant or stuck.
Yeah, and I've had to constantly prove myself to show like, I know what I'm doing. Y'all can trust me with this. And they've consistently added like, okay, we can help with this. Like, I've shown them that they don't have to, like, I've shown them that I can do what they need me to do and more. So they don't expect me to be a tape recorder. And does that make sense?
Okay, that's good. So you've proven your skill, and they're like, okay, we trust you to do your own thing.
Yeah, and because of that, they've also got me more and more involved with the school, with the students and stuff. So
that's good.
Yeah. Hope you're enjoying this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. Want us to ramble about another topic? Drop a comment below on our Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Links, as always, will be in the description. All right, back to the podcast.
I know when people talk about teaching in Japan, a lot of people say you don't need to know Japanese to teach. You do need to know Japanese. So what would you say in your experience? Were you able to teach without speaking Japanese?
So it is not a requirement to teach Japanese, and that is explicitly stated. You don't need to know any Japanese, but at the same time, you don't need to know Japanese for your job, like for the teaching the students part. But interacting with the other teachers, interacting outside of school, you're going to have to like pick up some survival Japanese, like at the very least. I know for me, even if I used to watch a bunch of anime, or even if I pick up languages quickly, or, I can use phrases and listen to music and all that, like it was difficult not knowing what I know now. So if you can study, if you have the chance, I would say definitely do study. But for your actual day-to-day job, like what they're paying you for, you don't need Japanese. It makes it easier. Like I said, talking to other teachers, getting stuff done, tax stuff, like the important things, you can always get somebody to help. You're going to have a teacher who teaches English who can, like they can translate for you. Right.
Like your supervisor.
Right. And so there's always a teacher appointed to you as a jet, so you can go talk to them if you need anything, and they will help you out. But you don't need it, but I highly recommend if you can do it.
Okay. And I could say the same as a person who just came here. Um, I don't know. I feel like when people say you don't need to know Japanese, I think that is true to some degree, like you said, but there is a world outside your job or whatever you're coming here for. Like you're gonna have to interact when you're going for groceries or dealing with your like landlord or any kind of companies when you're setting
like
things up,
stuff,
like banking. So you don't need to know that much. And if you are in a city, sometimes there's like translators or something, but I wouldn't rely on that. I will say I didn't practice much of any Japanese before coming here because I didn't know I was coming to Japan.
Right.
So I've definitely learned a lot like through this immersion process. But if you have time, before you come here, if you do, or to any country that you want to move to, definitely practice some of the language.
Yeah.
Because even if they say you don't need it, I would recommend it. Because it depending on how long you stay. Let's say you stay for more than 2 years, you might as well, because if anything, that'll help more job opportunities.
Right, and it's super fulfilling too, like being able to communicate. And that's something I always tell my students, like, if you talk to me outside of class, I use a mix of Japanese and English, right, to get the what's it called, to get the message across. And I always tell them that, like, because in our class we mainly practice communication, whether that's writing or speaking, like I always tell them, like, if you can get the meaning across, that's all that matters. Like, you have tests that you're going to study for in your other classes. This class will help you with that, but more than anything, I want you to actually use it. So, like,
yeah,
and that goes the same for me. Like, I always tell them, I'm still struggling to read Japanese. Like, I can talk to teachers and I can talk to y'all like a little bit here and there, but like it's still something that I have to study. And I think making that relatable is super important, because especially if it's being forced onto them, like, you don't want them to feel like they're doing this because they have to. You want to create some kind of genuine interest. And whether you stay here for 2 years or longer, wherever you go, you're going to have a supervisor. You're going to have somebody who's there to, like, kind of, if you need it, they can help you. But it's really satisfying getting stuff done on your own, or like, the sense of accomplishment is really, I don't know, nothing compares to it.
Plus, it's like another skill, it's something else that you can have under your belt. And I noticed the people who, I don't know, kind of refuse to speak Japanese are the ones who, in their English speaking countries, expect immigrants to learn English.
That is true.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. Usually people like that are like, well, if you're in my country, you should speak my language. So that's kind of how I feel in Japan. Like, I'm in Japan, I need to learn how to speak their language.
Yeah.
And
it does help that people want to learn English and practice English. Like, that's definitely a plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's probably ideal to be at least bilingual here, and whatever your native tongue is, and then Japanese if you live in Japan.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's been 2 years on the JET program for you. So what has it taught you?
Ooh, that's a good question. What has JET taught me? Let's see. I think the JET program has taught me patience. As much as I hate saying it, it's taught me patience.
Okay.
Perseverance for sure. And it's taught me, how do I put this into words without sounding like lame? It's taught me that I don't actually know what I can do all the time, but because of that, it means I can actually go beyond what I expect.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, like, I didn't think that I would be able to get a lot of the government stuff done without external help, which I still did get, but like, I got most of it done with me and you, like, teamwork. I didn't think that moving here and, like, resetting and accumulating stuff would be as difficult as it was, but we did it,
True.
So the three things I guess JET has taught me is, like, patience for one, because nothing comes easy and it's so frustrating, but
Oh yeah, you definitely have to have patience when you're here in Japan, especially if you don't know Japanese that well, because I don't know, the process is long. You know, if you have to get something done, you have to get it translated, you know, and then you have to kind of talk about it. And then there's like a waiting period.
Right. And then it has to be explained to you. And then I always ask questions as much as I can, because sometimes people will leave out information consciously or unconsciously. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, with the language barrier, you may understand what they said, but there's usually like nuances that you may not understand.
Or subtext, yeah.
Exactly. So I think that can lead to some kind of confusion, and it can lead to frustration. So like you said, patience is really important.
Yeah. And then number 2, perseverance. Like patience and perseverance are very similar, but perseverance means like you are doing something and you may not see the efforts of it yet. So patience is like,
and you're like willing to tough it out.
Patience is waiting. Perseverance is like waiting for a result that you're like expecting. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely taught me to like just kind of grit my teeth and just be like, okay, let's go, you know? And then number 3, like I said, I try not to have expectations a lot, but it's hard. But sometimes you don't know what you can do, right, until you're put into that situation. And I think having come
Big
here,
facts.
like the self-discovery I've had to go through, the growth as like a professional and also as an educator that I've had, the not like people skills, but like the ability to handle people of all ages is actually, I think, something that I'm taking with the most, because I deal with like, you know, teenagers to like young teenagers to people my age to people older than me, like, you know, with the staff and all that. That I think is one thing I wasn't expecting to get. So yeah, like Jet itself as an experience has given me a lot, and then the Jet program, like working through it, has given me like different things.
Yeah,
so,
those are pretty cool.
Sounds
like
I appreciate that.
It sounds like no matter when you leave, you'll leave with those things, and those are great.
Yeah, and I won't say that like, oh, the Jet program did this for me, because
it's like the experience that comes with it.
Right. I always take something no matter where I work. Right. Like I always try to take something away from it, because otherwise there wasn't really a point in me doing anything.
No, that's good to have, because sometimes if you're just doing it for whatever, you're like, where did my time go?
Yeah, and I've always been like that, because I've been through situations where I've tried doing stuff and like, or I've been forced into situations where like I get nothing out of it, whether that's like
that's
an experience or like, so I won't say that Jet will do these things for you if you get accepted. It's more like, these are the things that I've had to take away from it, from the struggle, and then this is what I got. So like, your struggle is going to be different. You're going to get different things. But for me, it's been definitely like patience, perseverance, and like, holy shit, I did that. Like, I didn't think I could do that. Wow.
Yeah, I do hear a lot of like people asking like, so how is it, so they can go through the same thing. It's like, nah, like whether you're coming here for a teaching job or just traveling, or I don't know, a salary job, whatever,
for education or whatever,
whatever it is, I think instead of focusing so much on how other people did it, which it is helpful to hear stories, but I think just let go, like just do it and just let go and see what happens, because I think you'll get more out of that experience by just doing your own thing versus trying to fit into a certain timeline that someone had.
Yeah, and you're always going to have gripes. Like, I complain a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Y'all should not catch me on a bad day. But, man, sometimes you just got to let it out.
Yeah, and the people who expect it to be a perfect experience, or who have high expectations of Japan, I think when you come here, just, like, don't even expect anything of how Japan's going to be like. Just come here and just experience it, because the people who have high expectations, who want it to be positive all the time, are the ones that leave like as soon as they get here.
Yeah, I had high expectations when I first got here. That was shattered within maybe like the first 4 days. Like, no, I'm dead serious. Like, I got here, I was like, wow, because like coming here, it was a very positive experience, at least, you know, at the beginning, and then it like dove down, and then I had to like really dig myself out and be like, okay, what can I get out of this?
Okay.
So like the mental, I guess, journey I had the first maybe like week to month was very different than I think most people would expect. Maybe we could talk about that another time. Like,
Yeah.
you know, our mental health, like coming here, how it was, and then how we deal with it now.
Ooh,
You know
that's
what
a
I'm
good
saying?
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if y'all want to hear that, definitely hit us up. But yeah, the expectation thing is super real. Cause like when we first got here, it was kind of, everything was handled. We didn't have very much like wiggle room. So we were kind of like told what to do, where to go. After that, when we had like free time or when we split up like to go to our own separate like teaching areas and apartments or whatever, like after the orientation, that was when, well, before that a little bit, but that was when a lot of those expectations were completely shattered. So if you come here with those, like I didn't have many, but they were starting to build, you know what I'm saying? So like,
yeah, the excitement gets to you.
yeah, so like if you come here with those, I can't even imagine.
And next episode, I actually want to talk about like our first year and how that was, and our second year now, so we can kind of compare how we felt and the things that we knew, and now how we have kind of evolved, because I feel like the first year and the second year are completely different in my eyes. So if you want to hear about that, stay tuned for the next episode.
For sure.
But okay, so before we close off the episode, I do want to know, what are 2 aspects that you dislike about the JET program, and 2 aspects that you love?
Dang, that's a good question.
You can even just be one if you don't.
I can do 2. I like talking. So 2 bad points and 2 good points. First of all, that went by really quickly. And then second of all, I have a couple of things in both camps. So I'm not going to say like here's this many or here's that many, but I'm going to start with the bad and end with the good.
Okay.
So on the bad side, the application process is extremely long. Like that, like,
yeah,
man, and what's even stranger to me is that you're not coming in at the beginning of the Japanese school year. Like a lot of us come in the second semester onwards, which is, unless you're an early departure, you can choose that option and not everybody gets it or whatever. But yeah, that's one thing I don't like about it. The application process, like pre-JET.
Okay.
That to me is the biggest like downside.
I think that deters a lot of people anyways. It's like if you want to join, you have to stick around for a whole year.
Yeah, and like I get it. It's like a deterrent, like it weeds out a lot of people. But that's a con for me. The other con is the term limit. So it used to be 3 years, now it's 5 years.
Oh, so like just having that cap in general.
Yeah, and I think I understand why they do it. They want to create, it's an exchange program, right? So they want to create a culture of an open door policy. Like you can come, you can go, you can stay here after JET with another company, or you can try to work within JET, or like they try to have the open door policy for like fresh faces and fresh teaching styles and like all that, right? The thing I don't like about the term limit though is that it is, well, number one, it had to be extended because of how you come into JET. It's not like a regular ALT position where you work part-time and then you leave. You are required to be at school whether you are working or not, whether you are actively engaged with the school or not, or whether you have something to do. It's like you have to be at the school even if they're not utilizing you to the fullest. So you have to, like, it's very self-motivated. So I think the term limit really deters people. Like you're going to stay here for 5 years and then you have to do all this work and then it's just 5 years. Like,
yeah, because some companies, it's like you could stay there as long as they like you. You could stay there for 10 years and plus.
And if you get really invested in your school after 3 years, now it's 5 years, which was very recent change actually. Like if you're involved with these teachers and students, like a cap on that, I feel like that actually does more damage than good.
Okay.
Those are 2 negative things. I do have one more thing. They're opening up a lot of openings in Tokyo for the Olympics, and they're mostly in high schools. So this is actually not very common. Most JETs teach junior high, elementary, some high schools. So Tokyo is kind of a unique situation. Even if I got the job because of that, I think that's kind of a con, because what's going to happen post Olympics? Like a lot of things in Japan see the Olympics as an end goal instead of a new beginning. And some people in the news and in policy are talking about like, oh, we're trying to be a global Japan. Like, you hear rumors and hints of it, but a lot of people are focusing on the main event.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a con for me. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have right now.
That's actually an interesting question, because I thought about that too. I guess they may lessen the spots, or they may keep them if they want to continue making Japan more English friendly.
Right.
You know,
like I
have
don't
people
see...
required to learn English.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I don't know what the plan is going forward. Like, and especially because we're kind of at the bottom of the food chain. Even if they do have a plan, it is not distributed through the entire system. So
True.
Yeah, that's like my last thing.
Okay.
Those are my cons. The good things, you get to come to Japan. Like, number one, you get to work and live in a country that is actually really cool. It does have its downsides, but I'm also picky and I complain a lot.
It's okay. We're pretty critical.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I hate when people say, they're like, "Oh, why can't you just whatever?" Like, no, you can be critical of something and still enjoy it and still love it, no matter what.
Definitely.
That is. Like, even if that's somebody's company or somebody as a person, like, you can be critical of something or someone or a place or a culture, and you can still, like, you know, enjoy and appreciate it for what it is. So I really do think the JET program as a, you know, like a state sponsored, like, hey, we want to have a culture exchange, come work for us. Like, I think that's really dope. Like, it is genuinely progressive in its approach. So I think that's cool.
And the fact that it's international, you get so many different types of people. Yes. And also that's a good viewpoint for the children that are learning English from y'all, because they see teachers with different dialects of English, which I think does need to be more normalized, because I know a lot of language schools will prefer American English accent. But then there's, you know, British English, and then there's like English like in India and Australia and New Zealand and, you know, and so many more. And I think when all those type of people come and teach children here, they see, wow, like, even though I may have a little bit of an accent, I can still speak English.
Yeah. And, you know? And when I came for the orientation, it blew my mind, because there were people from New Zealand. There were people from other parts of Asia. There were people from Latin countries. There were people from Europe. There was people from the Fiji Islands. There was people from South Africa, like all over.
Yeah.
And so that was dope. I do think that's cool. Another good thing is that, maybe this is just my school, but like, when you are in close proximity to students who may or may not be interested in what you're teaching, but you're able to engage them, they develop a lifelong interest in something, right? So like, if your students are really into like robotics, right, and you teach a robotics lesson in English and you show them, like, you know, hey, if you like robotics, here are some other things that you can look into, you know, you develop that skill, right?
Okay.
So that's another plus point, is that you get to really shape, you know, children through experiences.
You shape the future.
Yeah.
Especially for Japan, because there's so much potential with them.
Yeah.
So you're literally teaching the future here.
And another, another plus point. So not only are you shaping the future, but also like, you get to kind of witness development. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you decide to stay. So the first point is like, yeah, you get to come here and work here and live here. And like, the students also get that there's like an isolationist history. So they're being exposed to new things, right? The other side, not only are you shaping them through experience, but they get to like witness what it would be like to talk to foreign people, especially with the Olympics coming up. Like, I know I said that's kind of a con, but it's also good, because whether they like it or not, Tokyo is already a very, very popular place globally.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just going to be more and more of that. So I think it also helps kind of soften that impact. That's another plus point. And my last plus point is actually related to life here. So yeah, moving here was hard. Yes, I do have complaints. Yes, I'm going to be critical about it. But living in Japan, I do worry about getting soft a little bit, but it's kind of weird being uncomfortable with being comfortable or being safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay having that level of discomfort, but also like, I'm so used to kind of just being like so hard all the time that like coming out here, it's been weird.
It's probably good for your soul to kind of let loose a little bit though.
It does. I have loosened up quite a bit. I think like my freaking ice cold heart is melted a little bit. But yeah, those are my plus points.
Yeah, I'm glad Japan can do that for you. I feel like it's kind of done that for me too. I can kind of just sit back and just, you know, really enjoy life and mostly like nature, because Japan is very like,
oh my god,
nature friendly.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's the thing about Japan program, nature.
Yeah, because they try to preserve it, and I think that's something that was kind of missing when I was like in Houston, because it's just so many buildings, and you would think like all of Tokyo is like that, but it's not. There's still a lot of nature preserved everywhere. And I respect that, because it's like, yeah, I live on planet Earth. Like I want to see that, you know, I want to be immersed with nature while also being modern. So I think
like you can have both, you know, ¿por qué no los dos?
So I think that's very nice. So what kind of advice would you give to people who may be applying for the JET program or interested?
I have 2 sets of advice. If you're interested in JET, look into it. Check out our podcast. Look at all the JET videos from all of the years, not just the recent ones, so that you can see the differences. You can be more prepared. If you're interested, talk to people, like reach out on Facebook. There's a lot of groups. You can find people on Twitter, you know, search up ALT stuff. And that's like Japan specific, right? And if you're interested in JET, there are other things besides JET. So, you know, keep your options open, because again, if you don't make it, you can always apply next year. You have a year, you can get here. And then if you're already here, you're going to have to go back to your home country to interview for JET. So that's like one kind of downside. I didn't talk about that, but yeah, the interviews have to be in your home country. That's one kind of weird downside. But so that's if you're interested, right? Now, if you're applying for JET, my advice would be have all of your documentation, right? Like
get your passport.
Sure, oh my god, yes, get every single thing that you need, because if there's one thing I know Japan appreciates is having your shit, because if they don't know something and you have all the information that they need, they can get what they need. So that's one thing. So if you're applying, have all your stuff together, you'll be good. Another tip is same thing, reach out to like Facebook groups and all that, so that you can get the most up-to-date information from people on the ground. And then number 3, be honest with yourself and with the JET like program and teachers and everybody. Like if you're honest with yourself, you can then communicate to your like contracting organization and to your supervisors. You can communicate what you need, and then if you're honest with them about what you need, they can then, well, I mean, if they're bad people, they're going to be bad people, but for the most part, they can get you what you need. So be honest with yourself, like about your expectations, what you want, and like what you're coming here for, you know, what are you going to get out of it? And then be honest with the people you're working with on your applications, talking to them, everything, because you never know. Like I was honest on my letter and I was like, I'll probably apply again because this is dope.
I think it humanizes you more when you're more honest instead of sounding like robotic.
Yeah, don't fake it. No.
Yeah, they'll see right through that. But
because most of the people doing the JET interviews are ex-JETs, so they know.
They know. Like, yeah, that's true.
Because I remember thinking that, like, I don't know what y'all went through. Like, yeah, I don't know what y'all saw. So they know. They're going to sniff it out. Be honest with yourself. Yeah. And if you're applying already, good luck. That's my advice. You're going to need it. Good luck.
All right. Well, those are some solid tips. And thank you for answering these questions, Ashish.
This was fun. Can we do more of these?
Yeah, sure. I think Ashish likes to be interviewed.
I do. And I love talking. Like,
cool.
I don't have to do anything. I just can go off in my head.
I feel like he's been saying that like this whole time. I don't have to do anything.
Well, okay. No, you know what? How about this? Next time I'll do the episode.
Yeah, interview me.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. What should the topic be?
I don't know. How about y'all tell us what?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Anyways,
oh my God.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If there are any questions that you have about being an ALT, on the JET program, or living in Japan in general, leave a comment below or on any of our social platforms. Yes. And if you want Ashish to interview me, leave a topic suggestion. And
hit me on Twitter at storystyle, STRYSTYL. Leave me topics so I can interview Bree.
And if you want more content from us, check out season 1 if you haven't already. We also have a YouTube channel, so subscribe there for random Japan content. We're about to blow it up with some more videos.
Oh yeah.
And we appreciate everyone who tuned in. And of course, if you have any topic suggestions, let us know.
Yes, we love hearing from y'all. Please hit us up. We live for it.
Yeah, for those who have like followed, subscribed, liked our stuff, shared our stuff, we really appreciate it, because I thought no one was going to listen to the podcast and I thought no one was going to really like it, but I did it anyways.
It happens a lot. So,
but I really appreciate it. That's really cool. And if you have anything that you're working on, let me know, and like we can like collab, or we can shout out each other. Like, let's make this a community.
For sure. Abnormies, what up?
Hey, abnormies. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Abnormal Japan podcast. Stay tuned for future content by following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Support us by leaving us a review, sharing us on your socials, or even joining the Abnormie community on Patreon. Until next time.